Are serial killers actually geniuses? I have a bit of a problem with this episode because if the answer turns out to be yes, I might have accidentally built this entire YouTube channel on a lie. Some of the original videos I made for breakfast cereal were basically just me sitting on a couch explaining why famous serial killers were idiots. But every single time I call one of them stupid, somebody shows up in the comments with the same argument. Actually, Ed Kemper had an IQ of 145. Ted Bundy was incredibly intelligent. He was a lawyer. Well, first of all, Ted Bundy was not a lawyer, okay? But I understand the larger point, I guess. There are serial killers who are clearly intelligent people, at least by conventional academic measures. So today I figured we should actually figure this out once and for all. Are serial killers unusually intelligent? And have I been unfairly calling a collection of gifted intellectuals fucking idiots for the last few years? Welcome to Breakfast Cereal. My name's Josh. Now, before I give you any numbers, like usual, I want you to give me yours. What do you think the average serial killer IQ is? Now, the average IQ in the general population is designed to be 100. So tell me where you think serial killers land. Like 80, 100, 115? Don't Google it. Just put your guess in the comments, because there's an actual number we can compare it to later. And I don't think it's going to be the number that most people expect. Now, before we start handing out Mensa memberships to murderers, we need to establish what an IQ score actually is. IQ stands for intelligence quotient. Although, modern IQ tests aren't really giving you some direct measurement of the amount of intelligence sloshing around inside your skull. No, they're standardized psychological tests designed to measure a collection of cognitive abilities and compare your performance with other people in your age group. The scoring is constructed so that 100 is the average, with the standard deviation usually set at 15 points. That means roughly 2/3 of people fall between about 85 and 115. But people talk about IQ numbers as though they're percentages. If Ted Bundy has an IQ of 124, that doesn't mean he has 24% more brain than you. If somebody has a 140 IQ, they're not 40% smarter. It's not how this works. Depending on the test, you're being measured on things like verbal reasoning, working memory, visual spatial reasoning, processing speed, and problem solving. Square or fucking circle. That shit. But an IQ test is not a direct measurement of common sense. It doesn't measure morality. It doesn't tell you whether you're going to make good decisions, and it certainly doesn't tell you whether you're going to be pleasant to have lunch with. And that's where the mythology around geniuses gets a little strange. Albert Einstein. Guy's probably the name that we instinctively reach for whenever we want to describe an absurdly intelligent person, right? Although it's funny, as Brian Regan says...
They always say Albert Einstein was a genius. Then how come when anyone ever calls you that, it's an insult? You don't know where you parked the car. Good job, Einstein.
But how smart was he? You'll constantly see articles saying Einstein had an IQ of 160. Except there's no documented standardized IQ test showing Einstein scored 160. That's just an estimate that has been attached to him after the fact. Okay, then you got John Nash. You might remember him, Beautiful Mind, Russell Crowe, right? That's how Hollywood tells you that somebody's a genius, right? They do math equations on windows with wax markers. And then, of course, you got Stephen Hawking. The guy somehow became the subject of a bunch of viral Epstein conspiracy claims years after his death. Imagine being smart enough to fundamentally change our understanding of black holes and time. And you still can't escape Facebook bullshit. If that's what happens when you're a genius, I'm comfortable way down here, okay? But the bigger point is that intelligence is not one magical quality that makes you good at everything. So, with that established, what happens when we actually test the serial killer genius idea? So what is the average serial killer IQ? Now, this is where things get interesting. And you guessed it, The Radford University Serial Killer Database has collected IQ information on known serial killers for years. Seriously, people, by now you guys should all know. Go look through this database. It's fascinating. Anyway, in their 2020 statistical report, they had IQ scores for 319 serial killers, including 297 from the United States and 22 from other countries. The average, 92.3. The median, 85. Yeah, I don't know. It's not exactly, Xavier's school for gifted murderers, is it? And that median's especially interesting because extremely high scores can just pull an average upward. Like if Bill Gates walks into a Tim Hortons, because fuck Duncan, the average net worth of everybody in the building suddenly just looks fantastic. But nobody else got richer. So in this sample, the middle score being 85 is arguably more revealing than the average of 92.3. Now, before I run off and make a new episode called
Science Confirms Serial Killers Are Morons,
which, granted, is a sick title for an episode, there's a gigantic caveat here. The researchers themselves warn us that these IQ numbers are biased. You see, an unusually high IQ score is interesting, which makes it more likely to end up in a book, newspaper article, or psychological profile. Same goes the other way. An unusually low score is also interesting and may become part of, court proceedings, especially when competency or intellectual disability is being discussed. I'd be very suspicious of an article that confidently tells you the average serial killer has an IQ of exactly X. What doesn't change is the larger conclusion. There is absolutely no evidence here of serial killers as a group being geniuses. Which brings us to the guy who's going to be screaming from the comment section if we don't talk about him. Big Ed. But Ed Kemper had an IQ of 145.
Genius, genius, genius!
Yeah, sort of. Ed Kemper's clearly very intelligent by conventional IQ measures. But this is also a perfect example of how messy serial killer IQ numbers become once you start trying to trace them. You'll see 145 everywhere, but you'll also see 136. And during Kemper's trial, his IQ is described as 131. Whatever exact score you choose, Kemper is not evidence that serial killers are generally geniuses. He's evidence that Ed Kemper is intelligent. Those are completely different statements. I mean, Shaq is 7'1" or whatever he is, right? That doesn't mean basketball players are 7'1" on average, does it? Kemper also comes across as extremely articulate in interviews, which I think kind of contributes enormously to the perception of him as some Hannibal Lecter style intellectual. He talks calmly, uses psychological language, self-reflective, sort of. He sounds insightful, right? And because the person talking is a serial killer, we give those qualities this almost supernatural importance. My God, he understands himself. Okay, you know what? I understand why I eat an entire bag of Doritos at 11 o'clock at night. It's yet to stop me. Self-awareness and self-control are certainly not the same thing. Kemper can absolutely be highly intelligent and still make catastrophically stupid choices. Those ideas do not conflict, which is why I maintain that book smart and idiot can coexist perfectly happily inside the same human skull. If you want to kind of dig more into Kemper and his words, I have like an off-the-cuff series where I just react to serial killer interviews, and I did one with Kemper. I'll link it above and below. It's certainly unscripted, just my natural thoughts as I go, and I'm not a professional, but some people think it's interesting. It's called Press Play. You can check it out here. But Josh, Ted Bundy was a lawyer. No. Old Piss Pants Bundy graduated from University of Washington with a psychology degree and attended law school. First in Washington, later at the University of Utah. He did not finish law school and certainly did not earn a law degree. His IQ is another number that gets weird when you try to trace it. The number you see constantly online is 136. But material connected to serial killer research has listed Bundy's IQ as 124. It's not a tiny difference. Again, either number puts him above average, sure. But this is exactly why I don't want to throw a giant graphic on screen saying,
Ted Bundy, IQ 136.
Although I guess I just did. Scratch that. Ted Bundy, 124, 136? Above average? I don't know, exact number unknown. Even something as seemingly straightforward as finding an IQ score can turn into a surprisingly deep research hole. And one of the stranger problems that I run into while researching this channel is that I finally managed to track down exactly what I'm looking for, and then I click on it, and I get the dreaded message, this content is unavailable in your country. Which is particularly annoying because I'm in Canada, and apparently, occasionally the internet has decided that Canadians, we simply just don't need access to important historical footage. That's one of the reasons that I use Surfshark. Now, with a VPN, I can change my virtual location to another country in just a couple of clicks. So if a documentary is available in the US, but not in Canada, I got another way to try to access the material that I need to make these episodes. The other reason I like using a VPN is for privacy and security, of course. Surfshark encrypts your internet traffic. A good idea for most people, honestly, but it feels especially appropriate for me considering the things that I have to Google for this channel. I mean, my search history is basically, how long does a body take to decompose? What kind of rope did this serial killer use? Can you dissolve a human body in acid? So, yeah, if I ever end up in court for something completely unrelated, I'd really prefer nobody dramatically reading my Google searches to the jury without the important context that I have a YouTube channel. And Surfshark also lets you protect multiple devices with one account. Whether you're researching on your computer, watching something on your phone, or on your TV, you can keep everything covered. If you want to try Surfshark, scan the QR code or go to surfshark.com/breakfastcereal and use the code breakfastcereal at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark. Okay, so now that my extremely suspicious internet activity has been adequately explained, let's get back to, serial killers. Does being smart make you a better serial killer? This was the next thing I wanted to know, because maybe the average isn't particularly high, but perhaps the smarter offenders kill more people or avoid capture longer. That would make sense, you'd think? And the Radford data does give us something interesting here. Among serial killers with available IQ scores, offenders with 2 known victims averaged about 86.9, 3 victims, 92.3, 4 victims, 88.8, 5 victims, 90.0. More than 5 victims, 99. So yeah, I mean, the group with more than 5 victims had the highest average IQ. But look at that number, 99. We've traveled all the way from serial killers are evil geniuses to an average person. The relationship isn't like a nice staircase where every additional 15 IQ points unlocks another murder or something. The numbers just kind of bounce around. There's a similar result when the database separates offenders by crime scene organization. You've probably heard people refer to serial killers in those 2 categories, right? Disorganized or organized. The disorganized averaged about 89.4. Those categorized as organized, 98.7. Mixed offenders, 100.9. There may be something there worth studying. But once again, the organized serial killer isn't averaging 145. He's averaging basically normal. So it's like the guy who's like carefully planning the crime. It's not necessarily Lex Luthor. He just owns a calendar or something. How educated are serial killers? And this is where the Bundy stereotype takes another hit. The 2020 Radford report includes education information for 1,324 serial killers at the time of their first homicide. Of those, 59.4% were classified as having no degree. 3.4% had a GED. 26.4% had a high school diploma. And only 5.1% had a bachelor's degree. So if we combine the first 3 categories, 89.2% of the offenders in this data set had no completed credential beyond high school or a GED when they committed their first homicide.
If you make my words, I'm going to get my grade 10, and everybody else can just catch a boat to fuck off land.
Now again, I would not directly compare those percentages with today's general population and announce that serial killers are like less educated dummies, because these offenders come from different eras and generations when educational attainment in the United States was different. But the data certainly does not look like a population overflowing with PhDs. Maybe we're talking about the wrong kind of intelligence. There's another problem with this whole conversation. IQ is not the only thing people mean when they call someone intelligent. So years ago, I worked at a place where I was surrounded by these engineers who were some of the most technically intelligent people that I have ever met. These guys could probably build you like a perpetual motion machine during their lunch break, which I understand is impossible, but these guys were so smart, I feel like they could have at least made a very convincing one. And then you'd actually go to lunch with them and discover that, some of them could not successfully complete a conversation with another human being unless that conversation happened to be about perpetual motion. Brilliant, brilliant engineer. Absolutely helpless at Applebee's. And that's where emotional intelligence becomes useful. Psychologists Peter Salovey, John Mayer, and David Caruso's ability model of emotional intelligence describes abilities involving perceiving emotions, using emotion to facilitate thought, understanding emotions, and managing emotions. Notice how much broader that is than just guy seemed charming. Because this is another place where Bundy gets turned into a genius. People say he knew how to manipulate people. He knew how to appear trustworthy. He could convince women to help him, therefore, genius. But being capable of reading one aspect of another person's emotions and exploiting it is not necessarily the same thing as being emotionally intelligent across the board. If I discover that my dog Fred will follow me anywhere if I have cheese, which he absolutely will, by the way, I haven't become emotionally superior to Fred. I just found cheese. A person can apparently be good at identifying vulnerability or producing a convincing social performance while being catastrophically deficient in empathy, emotional regulation, or healthy relationships. And unfortunately, there just isn't a giant validated data set where somebody administered standardized emotional intelligence testing of 500 serial killers. At least not one that I could find. So I'm not going to invent an Ed Kemper EQ score and put it on a chart, but it does show why the word smart becomes so slippery. So why do we think serial killers are geniuses? I think there are a few things happening all at once. First, the exceptional cases are more memorable. Killer has an IQ of 145. That's a story. Killer has an IQ of 97. That's just paperwork. Second, we're disproportionately familiar with killers who were articulate enough to become media figures. You can find hours and hours of Ed Kemper interviews online. Bundy represented himself in court and became a media spectacle. We hear those guys speak, often for hours, whereas there's thousands of less charismatic offenders that are just names in databases. Third, surviving undetected gets mistaken for intellectual achievement. And fourth, fiction has absolutely poisoned the well. The fictional serial killer isn't merely smart, is he? He understands psychology better than the psychologists. He anticipates the police before they know what they're gonna do. He quotes obscure literature, listens to classical music. He even knows which wine goes with human liver.
Nice Chianti.
Meanwhile, the actual statistical sample has a median IQ of 85. Media loves a mastermind. And I also think, as usual, as most episodes, I think the media deserves some blame for this too. Because criminal mastermind is just a much, much, much better headline than a fairly stupid man continues being fairly stupid. there's a perfect example of this involving Deadpool here, Wade Wilson. And again, yes, I know he's not a serial killer. Covered that, okay? Don't email me. I have this in my Wade Wilson episode, but yeah, there's an actual headline from 2024, I think it was. Florida killer Wade Wilson accused of masterminding escape attempt from jail. Okay, mastermind. Wow. Okay, so I mean, what did our criminal mastermind Wade Wilson come up with here in this escape attempt? So if you look further, he banged on a window, like a reinforced window, until it cracked. I mean, that's basically it. Managed to kind of look. Oy. I guess there was some other allegations that said that he tried to arrange transportation for the escape, so there was technically a little more planning involved. So I guess he banged on a window, but before that he had called someone and said, hey, could you pick me up? I'm gonna bang on a window. But come on, mastermind? I mean, I'm picturing blueprints spread across the floor like Ocean's 11 or Sting when you use that word. Fake uniforms, like the guys who escaped from Alcatraz with the fucking Ferris Bueller dummy. But I mean, come on. I mean, Wade certainly is no Andy Dufresne. But okay, let's look at what that word does, though. Wilson didn't just attempt an escape, he masterminded one. Bundy doesn't manipulate somebody, he's a brilliant psychological predator. Kemper doesn't just speak articulately, he's a genius who understands human behavior better than the psychiatrist studying him. And once you start using that language, intelligence just almost becomes part of the character we're creating. The killer becomes a chess player, and everybody else becomes a piece on the board. So, have I been wrong all these years when I call serial killers idiots? Nah, because IQ and idiocy are not mutually exclusive. You can apparently score somewhere north of 130 on an intelligence test and still make decisions that will result in you spending the rest of your life in a concrete box. So the next time somebody comments, but Josh, Ed Kemper had an IQ of 145. Yeah. Maybe he did. Still an idiot. And now I have charts.